Perfect.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our weekly Learn in Your Lunchtime webinar. It's fantastic to see you all, and I'm very grateful that we've been able to get these going in 2022, and hopefully we'll be able to continue delivering lots of value through these live sessions. I think it's just so important to connect on a weekly basis, check in with everybody, and really, I suppose this is the sort of weekly team meeting of the Student Success Coach community. And of course, as you can see, we've got Tracey joining us in studio today. So one of our student success coaches and an absolute fantastic supporter of graduates and early professionals, and lots of experience and expertise in helping people get the jobs they want and launch the careers that they want and have all sorts of amazing success. So we'll get into the topic of the webinar just now, which is really how to get a job in 2022. And Tracey will give us a sense of how the year's kicked off and what we can expect in terms of the job market in the year ahead. But just from my side, a reminder that we've got the Facebook group, we've got the YouTube channel. So while you're here, please do just subscribe. Tracey and I will share our websites as well. So there's lots of resources freely available for you to take advantage of to help you be as successful as you possibly can. And a very important announcement for this week is that we launched a laptop giveaway courtesy of Tracey and her network. So Tracey, I mean, when you introduce yourself just now, you can talk a little bit about who that was that kindly donated that to the community. And the way that it works is inside the Facebook group, hop in there and you'll see a post announcing the giveaway. Just to recap on the rules, you will just need to comment on that post with your motivation as why you think you should get the laptop. And then it will be judged very simply on the top 3 comments based on the number of reactions, any type of reaction. Those top 3 will then be considered by myself and Tracey, and the winner will be announced in next week's webinar, which will be on interviewing for a digital marketing position. So we'll have Salil online talking about digital marketing and how you can prepare yourself to answer the types of questions for digital marketing. So I'm going to put a couple of links into the chat to provide you guys with all the resources that I've been speaking about. While you're here, please do subscribe. Achale, thanks. Great pleasure. We're here every Friday at 12 o'clock, so take advantage. Might make the difference in your degree. And Selfish says, so excited to be here. Great to have you as well. And the rest of you that are here, please just do tell us where you're from, what you want to learn today. Give us some good vibes. Tell us how your year's got off to. We're already in February and hope it's going well for you. But enough from me. Over to you, Tracey. Just to tell us how was your holiday and, tell us about the laptop and a bit of insights from your side.
Yeah, it was fantastic, Peter. I must say that it's rare when you have your own business, you don't have the luxury of taking time off. But I did, and I came back so inspired. And the year has been busy. And if I'm doing a lot of coaching, it's a good sign because it means that people are looking for jobs and that I'm doing a lot of mock interviews at the moment for my clients. That means people are interviewing. And the other really positive thing is companies are moving a lot faster this year. So so not only are they wanting to interview, but once they find someone they like, they're really churning out the offers quite quickly. So that's a good thing. I know, and COVID, of course, everyone's going to link it to COVID and undoubtedly so. But also towards the end of the year, people don't want to make hiring decisions. So, students graduating, they get to December and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have a job for next year. Whereas now suddenly there is action. And also where companies who hire graduates were saying, we're only going to take 1 or 2. So I'm finding the companies are now saying, actually, we want a few more graduates. So that also works really well in your favor. So I had a great holiday. I'll tell you a little bit more about the laptop a little later and some great work I've been doing with Study Trust because they're interlinked. But what I would love is, Peter, and those of you who've listened to me before, I love interactive chats. So it's not even just that one feeds off comments and engagements. It's because then I can tailor make what I'm saying. So, for example, I would really appreciate you telling me what year of study you're in, what you're studying, where you're studying it. And today I want to focus very much on people who have recently graduated, who haven't found anything yet, or maybe are in final year of studies this year. So I think the urgency is really there. So I want to focus on that. So it would be really useful, again, if you are someone who graduated last year, obviously graduated this year, but finished up at varsity last year, and you still haven't found anything, and you're really stressed, and you kind of feel like you've done everything, because I'll be able to look at what you have done and say what you could do a little more of. So pop some details in the chat, and I will keep an eye on it. But if I miss something, don't feel bad to spam me. All right.
No problem, Tracey. So that's a good suggestion there of how to get the most value from the session this afternoon. So guys, please do put specifics in your comments, and then Tracey can deal with those specifics, and it'll be more relevant to you the more information and details you can give us. I'll also put Tracey's website up so that you can get in touch with her as well. So Tracey, let's start with Itumeleng, who says, I studied a Bachelor of Social Science in Heritage and Cultural Tourism, and my second major was anthropology. I completed my degree last year. I'm graduating this year. He studied at the University of Pretoria. So welcome, University of Pretoria. And I presume then he's interested, as per the topic of this webinar, in positioning himself as best as he can with prospective employers and job opportunities out there in the market. Tracey.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming, Itumeleng, thank you for sharing. I'm assuming that you finished up at varsity end of last year, and you're here to share that you haven't yet found something. And don't worry that you haven't graduated yet. Companies are going to, they're going to speak to you now, knowing that you've finished varsity and that the graduation is still happening. So I'd love to know in the chat, just you can elaborate a little bit more. But what I would say now is it's no different to what you would have done last year in terms of your search. Probably a little bit more intense because you need a job and you've probably got nothing more than a study loan. But I want you to look back on what you did last year to apply for jobs and where it was falling short. Searching for a job, I find the bottleneck can be either, first of all, not knowing what you want to do, or knowing what your skills fit into. The other thing is not knowing which companies to approach. And we always think, what if they don't have a job? Or what if they wouldn't want me? Or what? I want you guys to think, what company do I want to work at? And how am I going to open doors there? Okay. So it's not knowing what company. Maybe it's that you're following the regular route that we all assume is the right way to find a job. We see when there's a vacancy, we sign up, we apply for the role, and we don't ever hear anything. Then the next thing is some people will do that and they will maybe get a decline. So we need to look at, why are you being declined? The next bottleneck that I find is massive and embarrassing as a recruiter myself. Recruiters are notoriously bad for not getting back to people. So what happens is you choose a company you really want to work for, you apply, no one comes back to you. My clients will come to me and say, Tracey, I've applied to 20, 30 companies and I've been unsuccessful. Where in actual fact, all that they've done is sent the CV or loaded it. And one recruiter who may have left or had a bad day or be ill or be swamped didn't get a chance to look at the CV, let alone respond, and you immediately think your entire career with that company didn't come to anything. So we need to look at how to make sure that people are actually seeing your CV. I'm not saying bypassing the official kind of process, uploading, but we also have to find an individual within the organization to follow up with. And then the next bottleneck is people getting an interview or two, or let's say first round interview, but being declined. And you're wondering now, is it that my skills weren't up to scratch? Is it that my interview technique wasn't right? And interestingly, when people come to me for advice or coaching, they often will come. In fact, the client just before now came to me saying, I'm worried my CV, I'm worried about my LinkedIn and whatever. I said, we can do that in 5 minutes. Don't worry. Let's put a strategy into place to look, because it's, let's say 90% of the time, it's actually how you're going about the search. So let's go back to, if you've popped it on the, just bear with me, guys, social science, Itumeleng. So Itumeleng, I would love you to, okay, the assumption is correct. So Itumeleng, for the benefit of everyone, what have you tried? And I know it takes courage to share, but everyone learns from it, right? You guys are in the same boat. What have you tried, and where are you finding that your bottleneck is? Okay, so we can look at that, we can break it down, and I'll tell you from there. Thank you for the comments, and this is such an engaged crowd, Peter. I'm very impressed.
Tracey, let's go back to, there was a great question from Mandisa.
Cool.
And I think this is good for everyone. So how can I make my cover letter memorable? So how can we, and whether it's the covering email or the contact that you try and make on LinkedIn, how do you stand out in a recruiter's inbox? So linking on from what you were saying, yes, we know recruiters are not that great at responding, but assuming they do at least open something up that you sent them, whether it's a cover letter or an email or a LinkedIn contact request, what's the secret sauce there for standing out?
Well, I think getting them to open it in the first place. Now, listen, I'm not slamming us recruiters, but what happens is you have someone in the business who is pushing for you to hire someone or you to find someone for their team. And they don't realize you may have 30 job specs, 30 managers desperate to find someone. So they don't often get a chance or have the luxury of doing exploratories and maybe helping you find something. They are actually, there are demands that they need to fill. So trust me, when you're working, like, say, for example, you're working 20 different vacancies within the company, and that is everything from screening to first rounds to engaging, there's a lot of stuff. So when somebody comes to a recruiter and they say, I'm really looking for a job, this is my background, and they say, oh, they didn't even come back to me, please understand that is why. That said, the first thing is getting them to open your cover letter. That's already memorable. Now, why I say that is if they're receiving a bunch of applications, they've put it on the portal, everyone's applied, they're scanning through, they could highly likely not even open your cover letter. And I'll tell you a little story about my experience as well. Why I say that is they are going through when I was recruiting graduates at Rand Merchant Bank, 3,600 CVs, scrolling through them. The cover letter wasn't a primary focus for me. So getting them to open the cover letter is, you do it by following up with the person. So you have to put the details, you have to apply via the process, but that's where it's super, super important to then go and find the recruiter at the company and say, I have also applied via the portal. However, I really want this job and I want to make sure that you see it. Okay, so that's already one step further than the other 3,599, okay? So more chance, so you've increased it. Then once you open it, I'll talk about the content. Once they open it, two things that I really don't like when I see a cover letter. I almost feel like, why did you bother? It's when it's sort of vague buzzwords, like, who doesn't think they're a great team player? They have, they work hard. They've got, like everyone says it. If you don't have it, I mean, you're not going to, you're going to say it anyway. So I always like a bit of a yawn with those. The other thing is when people repeat their CVs. So you're sending your CV, and then you have a cover letter, which basically does a summary of your CV. It's a waste of time. And it's, when you're screening a bunch of CVs, you don't want to trawl through all of that. What you want is something short, to the point, very personal, very honest, and the cover letter should be telling a story. So I'll give you an example. Say for example, here's my example. I'm putting myself into the position. So I have my CV, and attached to that, I'm in recruitment. I love graduate recruitment specifically. And instead of saying in my cover letter, I have 20 years in recruitment experience. I've run various graduate programs. I repeat. I would much rather tell the story of one day I was sitting, and this sounds like so bizarre, but it's captivating because it's a story. I was sitting on my granddad's, I'll tell you, somebody sent one this week. When I was young, I used to drive my mom crazy because I was always unscrewing and reworking the appliances. And right from then, I knew that I was somebody who wanted to blah, blah, blah. That's catchy. People want to read more. Tell your story and then supplement it with your CV. And the last thing I'll say on that, remember I said from my personal perspective, when I get an application, if I'm recruiting, which I don't do much now, but when I used to get an application, so I did graduate recruitment, and it recruited for the internship. Well, I started up the graduate program, so it was my baby. And when I got graduates applying, the first thing I opened was the transcript. Sometimes the only thing I opened was the transcript. I very rarely opened a cover letter because it was always so generic. Why I say the transcript for you guys is, as students, it's not your marks. It is not only your marks. When you are young and you haven't worked yet and you don't have much else to go on, your university or any tertiary qualifications hold a lot of weight. And as you get older, your skills will outweigh your marks and what you studied. But when you're young, as a grad recruiter, you kind of are. But you're kind of looking for what the person studied, where they studied, what the marks were, and especially what the trends are. So I look at transcripts and I can see areas of strength. I can see the subjects. I can see the choices that you made. I can see your ID number. I can tell your age. I can tell. There's so much at a glance. So if you're going to do a cover letter, make it an additional document rather than just a repeat. And the last thing I'll say is put it in the body of the email. So your cover letter is your email, and I call it an introduction letter. So introduction letter is your email, and then to that you attach your CV and all your academic transcripts, and even matric if you've got great marks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tracey. Excellent insights there. Danielle Moller asks, as a recent graduate who needs to enter an intern position, is the chance of getting a job with a smaller or bigger companies better, Tracey?
I don't think you really have, the luxury of choosing. To be honest, I think that the role, irrespective of, sometimes even irrespective of the industry, but the role, irrespective of the larger or the smaller, it's going to come with benefits. In a smaller company, you could be more hands-on. In a larger company, you may have a more structured career plan. So I think that you should apply to. Or if you then have the benefit of an interview, you'll go and meet them and you'll get a feeling for the organization. And then whether they're small or large or whatever is going to be less of a thing.
That's very important, Tracey. So the size of the organization will largely determine the breadth of the work that you're going to do, and that should really inform your sense of prioritizing which companies you want to work for. But as you said correctly, you may not have the luxury of that choice, and it's probably a case of just getting whatever you can as early on in your career. And as you build up an experienced CV, then you can become more choosy as to whether you want to work for a bigger or a smaller organization. The other challenge is, of course, as I've experienced in a large organization, you might get to the level where your breadth starts to become across the entire organization, and you have to then handle both the breadth and the depth. And that then, does position you for very much more senior levels and future growth opportunities. Tracey, I've put our course that we co-instructed into the chat, and I've opened that up for limited free enrollment today, and we'll only make it available during the webinar. Otherwise, I find it becomes too difficult to manage. So you'll need to enroll in that before 12 o'clock at 1 o'clock when we finish off. But that is our course on how to interview like a boss. So, presuming that you get an interview. And then I'll also put another course of mine in the chat, which is how to improve your job prospects. So I think it was the question from Tachafatso or one of the others saying, how do they improve their prospects and positioning in the marketplace, which covers a range of topics that we are going to cover off today. And on that point, so let's then go into Tachafatso's question, studying accounting science at University of Pretoria. I'd like to know what are the qualities I need in order to prepare for work. So Tracey, big, broad question and difficult to cover in 1 hour. And I would suggest, Tachafatso, go and get hold of Tracey and have an hour or two consult, and she can give you, the masterclass on that. And I've made available the course that we've done on it. But Tracey, just at a high level, I mean, how would you answer that question? And even not just for accounting, but, other industries as well.
So let's think about if we, say, for example, we were hiring graduates, what would we want? What would we look for, Peter? So it's not, let's break it into let's start with an obvious one. Tenacity, hunger to succeed, willing to roll up their sleeves, and whether or not you're somebody who likes to be coding in the corner quietly, or whether you want to be out there selling, or whether you're, outgoing or not, or whether you are great if you've got leadership. So those kind of qualities aren't, that everyone's different, and that's the diversity that we all welcome. But if you think about the qualities that you would have in order to secure a job, think about, if you were hiring, you have a company, you are allowed to hire one, or you want to hire one person. What would make that a person stand out for you? I think for me, it would be someone who reaches out, who engages, who doesn't just say, hi, I'm looking for a job, who actually looks at the structure of my company, who it matches up what their skills are with a potential role, who comes to me and says, Tracey, could I job shadow you for a month for free? Having that experience on your CV is worth millions later on. So yes, it's for free, and yes, you don't always have the luxury of not earning a salary, but I'm telling you that is an investment that's worth it. So there's another thing that, if you're thinking, I have my degree and I really want to be this, and somehow I'm not getting interviews, what you can do is go onto LinkedIn and go and see what other people who are doing that job have. Go and see if there's supplementary studies you can do. Go and see if there's they're doing certain courses. Go upskill in that way. And therefore you are positioning yourself in terms of your skills and expertise as well as you can, and then add the energy and the enthusiasm and determination, and you're going to get the job.
Yeah. Tracey, if I could just then also add on, as you said, if I was hiring somebody and we went through an interview process at the end of last year, and the thing that the candidate we hired eventually did in the interview, which stood out for me, she disagreed with me in the interview.
Really?
Yeah. And that was it, because everybody else was, because when I was setting up the question, I sort of made a bit of a statement and sort of teed up the question. And instead of all the other candidates who were just trying to say what they thought, and I was on a panel and they were sort of saying what they thought we wanted to hear, which was very vanilla and generic and buzzwordy, etc. She came with an opinion, she came with a view, she came with an intent, and she was willing to put the interview on the line because she believed passionately about how she stood on a certain topic, etc. And look, obviously, it wasn't something that we were non-negotiable about. It was an approach to doing something in the workplace. So just to answer that question, I think, everyone on this call today, you've got to have the guts to stand for what you believe in, and take a little bit of risk in order to stand out. That would be my answer to that question. But obviously, not too much risk. Don't risk. Or annoying people, etc. But I think, generally speaking, executives and experienced people are looking for divergent views. And Tracey, I've just finished reading a book called No Rules Rules, which was the story of the success of Netflix and how their organizational culture drove their incredible dominance of the entertainment industry, despite very humble beginnings when they offered Blockbuster to run their website, and this was back in 2000. And Blockbuster turned down the offer of $50 million to buy Netflix from them. And 20 years later, they're a quarter of $1 trillion company, and Blockbuster went bankrupt. And one of the things that Reed Hastings, the CEO, talks about in that book was fundamental to their organizational culture was this idea of candor and candid feedback and speaking up and having the honesty to speak out. And it's a certain amount of risk that you have to take, and it depends on the organizational culture. But one of the things they valued was dissent and disagreement. And when people kept quiet, they then failed in movie launches, they failed in product features. But when people had healthy, robust debates and disagreements about things, they had greater success because they got to a better answer. And people are looking for that in the interview to see how you will behave in the organization. So that would be, kind of a bit of an insight from my perspective. And I go, Trace.
Pete, it's so interesting because you interview loads of people, but you're actually remembering that person. So what kind of skills 100%. And abilities you need, and do something that's actually impactful. It does take courage, but finding a job takes courage. I really love that.
Trace, I know we've got another 25 minutes or so let's try and get through as many of these questions as we possibly can. Our man says, hi all, I'm a final year student, BSc Chemistry, second year biochemistry studying at Tuck. What should I do to stand out? Should I do internships? How to get internships? Again, all with the longer term objective, I suppose, of getting a job and a future career in your vocation.
So I'll talk to Maling's question as well, because whether it's an internship or a job, the process is similar. Let's break it into steps. First of all, CV, LinkedIn must be, that's really your marketing, your life marketing document. And in fact, guys, I think CVs are going to be phased out. I think LinkedIn is going to be take over as CVs. And in fact, Peter and I can do a LinkedIn chat at some stage, how to kind of use your LinkedIn. So you've got that. Sit down and please do not do a search for business analysts, up LinkedIn, PNet or whatever. Click apply. You're never going to hear anything. What I want you to do is say, these are the 5 companies I want to work for or intern for. And people are doing internships a lot more now because they're seeing it as a great way of hiring graduates. These are the companies I want to work for. Go to their career page, create a profile, sign up on their portal. That's the first place that they look for, people. If it's an internship, often it will be on a separate page, like under the young talent kind of internships and grad programs and etc. Then I want you to go and find, and you can phone the reception of the company if you need to. Phone the switchboard and say, I'm looking for the person in charge of hiring winter interns. Please, may I have their name? Ideally, their email as well. If they don't give you email, it's quite easy to find email addresses these days. go and find that person. Pop them a message to say, hey, Tracey, I have applied for the graduate program. Like I said earlier, please keep me on your radar. I really want to work here. Then what do? You go find a graduate who's working in that company and you say, maybe do a search and find someone who's a fellow alumni or you have something in common with. This is easy to say. I was also at UJ. How did you get in? Give me some tips. Okay. If you see someone who's a grad, you can always reach out to them, pop them a quick mail or LinkedIn inbox and say, does the company offer internships? Is there somebody in the company I can send my CV to? And even if they don't offer internships, maybe I can ask if I can job shadow for an afternoon. You've got to be proactive. It's scary. I don't think young people are lazy. I think it's that you don't necessarily know that you can do this, or you feel a bit like you're rashing people.
Yep.
So I'm giving you permission, having been in recruitment for over 20 years. People that stood out in my mind were the people who had the courage to reach out and be in touch and ask. And not just, hey, I'm looking for an internship. I have studied technology. I've studied computer science, and I'd really like to shadow a developer in your company for the afternoon. So give them the stuff that you need. Give them the stuff to help you. And then the same thing when it comes to looking for a graduate role. Often they'll say we're not hiring graduates, but companies are always looking for young talent with the right attitude. They'll even create roles. You never know. I remember, and I don't recommend this, but you see, I'm remembering it. There was a young lady who said to me, Tracey, she came for the internship, and she said afterwards, Tracey, I don't care if I have to chain myself to your desk and get you coffee all day, but I really want to work here. And she did end up working there. And I definitely don't recommend that. But look, she stood out in my mind as being that determined. So finding the job is not just applying and interviewing. Finding a job is finding creative ways to get noticed.
Okay, Tracey, John says completed honors in IT last year, difficulty securing a job for 2022. IT, surely, that should be in demand. So maybe contact Tracey, after the session and see if she can assist. But you've also applied for your master's. That's great. Should I wait it out and apply more or pursue master's? Tracey?
I would have, I don't think, again, you'd have the luxury of choosing right now. So I would go flat out with both. So you've got, you've applied for your master's as an option, but still apply. But don't just sort of half apply and then feel like, not getting a job, so I'm settling. I'd much rather you get some interest and maybe even a job, and then say, okay, does it make sense for me to do masters or take this role? So go flat out with both, have options, and then make an informed decision.
I would absolutely agree with that. Go flat out on both. And then if you guys will recall, when we interviewed Chris Warfick, we have a course on how to interview for IT positions. So Jean, I will open that course up now and pop it into the chat for you to enroll and go through a number of lessons that both Tracey and Chris then actually teach. And Chris himself is an IT expert from the UK. One of the things that stood out for me that he said in that webinar was, go build an app. Okay. If you've got a bit of spare time, so do both of those that you're talking about there, the masters and look for a job. But then if you've got a little bit of spare time, go build an app, go build a website, go, offer your services out. And Chris often then would see when, applicants came into his organization and they said, well, I built this app for my friend, or I built this website and it did this and that and the next thing. It was just that extra thing that stood out. And maybe this is the opportunity that you have to do that, obviously depending on specifically what you did then study in your IT qualification. Tracey, moving quickly on, I want to try and get through all the questions. I'm a final year at University of Pretoria, majoring in tax, accounting, auditing, and economics. Any recommendations on how to stick it out and secure a good future? So great question. That's what we all want, right? And a job might only be one aspect of that. But thoughts on those qualifications, phone R&B?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the fact that accounting then has some specialization. I know they often were looking, in all the banks I've worked at, tax as an add-on. So I really like that. I like the fact you're doing economics as well. It gives it more context. So it's not too siloed. So it's adding more value. When you ask me how to stick it out, it's making me wonder if you're perhaps not loving it and you're feeling a little bit like uninspired. You're a final year, so it's not like I would say just go and change change. However, it could be that the jobs that you're seeing that would be open to you are maybe not that exciting. And I think that it would be so good for you to reach out to graduates via LinkedIn again. Go and find graduates in a couple of different companies that you could potentially work at and ask them to talk through their average day. And I reckon that if you hear from someone what they're doing and you feel excited about it, I think it's going to inspire you to keep going with your studies. If you don't feel, like what are you working towards, I think it's really hard to stick it out.
Okay, thanks, Tracey. Appreciate that. Then just sticking with the economics, Josias is doing a final year BCom economics and econometrics at University of Johannesburg. He came here to know what are his options, right? So sticking with that theme of economics and accounting, Tracey.
Mm-hmm. So, Josias, it would be interesting to know when you started studying, what you thought that you could do, and then also, whether it changed. In terms of economics, it also, what you study could fit into a lot of different industries. So I would say, an economist, a researcher, working with data, I think that what you should think about is, what industry? Are you crazy about cars? Do you want to go and work for Toyota? I do know that in an investment banking environment, the economists that we would hire would have a master's. And also, the bank would not have more than a couple of economists, and they tended not to be graduates. So if there's anything, so let's say you want to go into investment banking, please consider something supplementary like a CFA 1, that's going to allow you, people are hiring graduates who have sort of actual technical skills, rather than an economist, which is something you could grow into with an organization. Now, I've always been in banking, so I'm talking from that perspective. So, and I admit that I may be different in other companies. But if somebody had economics with a CFA, that would be more meaty.
Great, Tracey, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Then very quickly on LinkedIn. So Tracey, yes, as I mentioned to you, myself and Salil, in fact, have now developed an entire masterclass on using LinkedIn to find a job. And we'll be launching that in the next couple of weeks. So we'll get both Tracey and Salil in to do a little bit of a panel discussion on using LinkedIn, supported by then obviously what is turning out to be a 3-4 hour course in which we teach you how to use LinkedIn, then we actually show you on LinkedIn all the different features that you've got access to and how to navigate it and update your profile and get the jobs that you're looking for. So to answer Tumeleng's question there about a LinkedIn chat, we'll schedule that for the next couple of weeks. We're just polishing up the course and we'll get it out to everybody as soon as possible. Then we've got a question doing MSc chemistry at University of Pretoria, but I do all my work with a certain company. Can that be counted as part of a job experience? I would say yes, Trace. I mean, it's workplace, right?
I think it's fabulous. And especially as you've got relationships now, they could be references or referees. I think absolutely put that. I mean, it's a gift to have had work experience. So absolutely.
Okay, Tracey, then Ashton, and we get this quite often as international students. I don't know what the situation there is with regards to his work permit and visa, etc. Maybe we must just cover that very briefly, Tracey. But chances of getting a job then as an international student?
So, my client this morning is actually looking for a job abroad. And so she's actually South African. And I was saying to her, It's so much easier. She's senior, so it's so much easier when you have skills to go on. So it's easier for people to motivate for a work permit when you're not a grad. As a grad, it is incredibly hard, and I am owning that. However, what you've got to think about is two things. How do you differentiate yourself from the other grads coming out? So what can you add on to make yourself more valuable? Because if somebody finds somebody with a skill that they really need, and they've been interviewing South African students and haven't found it, they're more inclined to then motivate for a work permit. They're more inclined to say, okay, so fair enough, this doesn't count from a Department of Labor perspective. However, I'm comfortable that I couldn't find those skills locally. The other thing is, so add on the extra value wherever you can. Your marks are great, but add on anything supplementary. The other thing that you can do is know that at first you may have to compromise a little bit. It's worth it. So my client 2 days ago is from, I think from Congo, and he was in academia. He then moved into a role that he is definitely more senior for. But he took it for a year because it got him into the market. And now he's got recruiters phoning him. Suddenly now the nationality is not an issue at all, because he's developed these skills that whilst we were even on the call, he was getting calls. So yes, bite the bullet, not easy. Persevere, it gets easier.
And then Tracey, I guess in that same vein, studying financial services, graduating in May, been applying to a lot of roles, declined or no response. How do I get past this? And again, my own personal story, which I've shared a couple of times. When I studied, I had a bursary from Eskom, and I had 150,000 rands debt because I wasn't going to continue there for various reasons. So my cover letter and my approaching companies included 150,000 rand debt, which was back in 1997. And I had to approach and write 70 different cover letters. So, depending on how many you've gone through and what level of resilience you have, I eventually found one person that said, right, we'll pay for your loan, come and work for us. And I did. And that was the foot in the door that I needed. So Tracey, again, you've talked about resilience and, standing out and not harassing people, but following people up as much as possibly can. Any tips in financial services specifically for this question?
Absolutely. And listen, just in terms of rashing or harassing, sometimes we feel like we're bombarding the company, but there could be 30,000 people there and you're messaging one person. You know what I'm saying? We often feel worse about it than it actually is a problem. There's nothing bad about just popping a, hey, don't forget about me. I'm not giving up. I really want to work for you guys. So now, in terms of clips from the internet, I love that. You see, what you're getting now is you're thinking, why am I getting declined and no response? Why not ask? Why not go back to them and say, just checking that you got my CV. Maybe they haven't responded because they just haven't been able to screen yet. Maybe they have put the role on hold and you're still being considered, but it's just maybe you being declined by an algorithm. How do you know? And you fret. So what do? You go and ask. Then you're going to start to get feedback and you're going to sense themes, and then you can address them. Right now, you're guessing.
Yeah. And Tracey, just also from our perspective, and what was evident in that last question was either decline or no response. So I would double down. If there's a decline, ask why. Ask what was the issue. Ask what was the gap that you're looking for. Not to try and keep that process going, but to learn from that for other job applications. And then the no response, you have every right to chase someone down until you do get a response one way or the other. So Mandisa, just on this question, and I'll give a couple of quick thoughts, and then Tracey, over to you. And then we've probably got time for one or two questions after that. But she asks, she's a graduate without the best marks, but some good part-time side hustle experience. How do I use that to my advantage when applying for jobs? So one of the things that we talk about in the LinkedIn course, which will be coming out in the next couple of weeks, is to go and do research on the recruiters themselves, because very often on their LinkedIn profiles, they talk about their approach to recruiting and to driving the talent pipeline for their organization. And when I was researching for the course, it was very enlightening, actually, because they will say on their own profile what their preference is for the type of talent they want to bring into their organization. And there were a number of recruiters, and I actually show this on the screen in the course, who actually talk about how they value this entrepreneurial type of experience. So you should actually then be targeting your search at the people that will be hiring you and would have some preference for that entrepreneurial type of experience, possibly because that's what they've experienced and what they've been good at in their own life. And if there's a recruiter's profile up there that talks about, they got the top marks at such and such a university, there's a good indication that that's what they would value in CVs that they would then look at, and that might not be the best person for you to target. Rather go for somebody in their profile who talks about the value of entrepreneurial skills, etc. And a good classic example is Elon Musk. He always talks about that and says, graduates and marks, etc., is a little bit secondary for him. He actually looks for people that can solve problems and have been able to start and run businesses and get things done in the real world. So, Tracey, thoughts on Mandisa's question?
Absolutely. So, for me, in actual fact, having a side hustle holds a lot more weight, and how you can position it. So first of all, I think it's a great thing on your CV. A lot of people don't have it. And the second thing is, you can always say, listen, my marks aren't great, but I was running a company, or I was selling t-shirts because I actually needed to pay me for my fees. So I don't think that that's a bad thing, so long as you position it correctly. Position it as say, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even want to study, but I did both. And yes, perhaps I could have grown my product, or perhaps my marks could have been higher.
Yeah.
But look what but position it positively, position it strategically, as if you had control. Yes, I was enjoying it more. I'm so glad I passed, kind of thing.
Yeah. And if Daniel Robus was here and we interviewed him last year, he would say, well, why don't you turn your side hustle into your main thing and then hire another 10 people and become an employer? And that was exactly the route that he followed. But again, there's some risk with that. There might be bills to pay, etc. So you're looking for a little bit of that stability in an organization, but don't discount that as a real opportunity as well. Tracey, last couple of questions, and then we'll let you go. First one, both of these last questions will be on CVs. So firstly, quickly here, customizing CV for every job opening or standard CV for multiple positions?
I mean, it's really hard to, I'm working with someone who is busy with their master's at the moment, and he has saved one, and in fact, he might even be listening. I'm giving away his secret, but he's got one for engineering, then he's got one for coding, being a developer, and he's got one for optimization, kind of so on. So, but it's very hard if it's like a broad range. I think that you could stick to a fairly generic CV, but what you could maybe then elaborate on is in your introduction letter. Whatever happens though, don't, because you don't really want to have to fudge it one way or the other. You want to be authentic, but whatever happens, don't send your CV to someone mentioning that you are so, for example, I really want to work in marketing, and you're applying for a finance role, but you last applied to Unilever, or I'd really like to work for Investec, but you're sending it to RMB. That kind of thing.
Tracey, then last question, also on CVs, 1 page, 2 pages. I mean, it's like a ball of string, but quick thoughts on that?
Remember, with these things, it's kind of our opinion, so people will vary. In the US, it's 1 page. In South Africa, it can be up to 8 pages. 2 is good. For me, 2 is good.
All right, Trace, last question. I think this is an important one then from memory. Suitable website for browsing jobs.
I think to go to a website that's going to showcase jobs from all over the place, is you're going to be sifting. I would rather, remember what I said, find a company you want to work for, or find some companies and go and check vacancies on their website. Where it's quite good is to use LinkedIn, because then you can set up alerts, specific alerts. You can put in keywords. So then the job specs that you're sent are going to be tailor-made rather than you going through a bunch. But to say one website, I mean, there must be some out there, but the fact that I don't know of them kind of, I don't know.
Look, LinkedIn, and again, in our course, we teach you how to create job alerts on positions based on the location and the industry that you're interested in. You will start getting job alerts in your inbox from LinkedIn, which is the single biggest professional network and jobs marketplace in the world. So I really support what Tracey's saying about LinkedIn, and the course is coming out very soon, so you'll be able to get into that and get some value from it. But I've also found in the South African context, this website up here, very useful for looking at bursaries, but then also to look at companies that support bursaried students and graduate recruitment type of hiring. So you could still go through that website. It's broken up according to the different faculties, and then in those different faculties, go and look through there for organizations, because they're putting themselves out there looking for people for bursary schemes, but they may also have positions that you could then talk about. Tracey, we're going to let you go and we're going to wrap up. All the resources and links are in the chat, so please do take advantage of all of them. Last thoughts from your side, Tracey, and we will see you next week to announce the winner of our laptop giveaway in the Facebook posts that we've got running at the moment.
Yes, I was meant to talk more about the laptop, but we'll talk about it next week. Cindy, you're always so engaging. Thank you. If there are two similar positions at a company, could you apply? I mean, should you apply for one or both? Which one's more likely to get you the job? Apply for both. And then Daniela, we already touched on. And there was somebody else that I really wanted to respond to. But in any case, the last thing I'll say is there's a Sagia is a great organization that focuses on companies who are recruiting grads. So they also have jobs and so on. And then also your university campus centers often will have jobs in their career booklets.
Yeah, fantastic, Tracey. Thank you so much. I'm going to put that in the chat there very quickly for everybody. We'll see you in the Facebook group, and we'll see you next week. Tracey, thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. Everybody, hopefully have a good weekend and good luck. Thanks all.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.